For the base example, you will use this pattern to cut out 2 rectangles of fabric. Once you have them, you'll put the fabric good to good, although in this case there's no difference between the good and the bad side. Line up one long side and you're going to sew a standard seam. So put the fabric against the 15, put the presser foot down with at least 1 centimeter of fabric underneath the foot, put the needle down. Using the foot pedal, sew a stitch or 2, hold the reverse button, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches, but not off the edge of the fabric, and then sew forward, allowing the machine to do the work and your hands to do the guiding, keeping the edge of the fabric by the 15. When you get to the end, stop, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches so you don't have to hand tie a knot, and then sew to the edge of the fabric, but do not sew off the edge. Lift the needle, lift the foot, pull those threads long. You want them at least 15 centimeters long. Cut them close to the edge of the fabric, and then cut your other original threads. And you're left with a standard seam which is sewn at 1.5 centimeters and reversed at both ends. The next step for this would be pressing. To press the basic seam, you'll first have the fabric wrong side up. Open the seam with your fingers, take the steamer and apply pressure and steam to flatten that seam, but keeping your fingers out of the way. Then flip it over onto the good side and press again so that your seam is flat and professional. Now to do the second part of the basic sample, you're going to hem one side. So press it under 1 centimeter, which you can eyeball or use the seam gauge to spot check. Take the steamer and press that side over 1 centimeter. And now you're going to press it over again, but this time 2 centimeters. So line it up, adjust your seam gauge to 2 centimeters, spot check it, and press that down. The next step would be to sew that hem. To sew the basic hem, line up the edge of the fabric against the 15, put the foot down with making sure you have 1 centimeter of fabric underneath the foot, put the needle down, again making sure you're going into fabric, sew a stitch or 2, reverse back 3 to 4 but not off the edge, and sew it forward, keeping it against the 15 the entire time. When you get to the end, stop, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches and again to the end, but not sewing off the edge of the fabric. Lift the needle and foot, give those threads a pull, cut them 15 centimeters long but short on the fabric. Cut your original threads and your basic hem is done. The next part of the basic sample is to sew a zigzag stitch. Your machine is on a straight stitch, so you need to change it to a zigzag, number 3. You can keep your stitch length at 2.5, but I would change the stitch width to about 4. And then take the other side of your fabric, fold it over about 2 centimeters, because it's easier to sew a zigzag on a thicker fabric. Line it up on the 15, put the foot down, needle down, sew a stitch or 2, reverse it back, and you should be able to zigzag the length of the fabric against the 15. Stop at the end, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches, let it go. Lift your needle and your thread, cut your threads, and that is the zigzag stitch. The last thing you're going to do on this basic sample is a machine gather. To do that, you're going to switch it back from zigzag to straight stitch. You're going to put your stitch length to number 4 and your stitch width back to 0. And then you're going to sew a line just in the middle of the fabric here between the zigzag and the basic seam. You can line up the edge of the fabric against the edge of that silver. Put the foot down close to the top, but don't reverse at the beginning. Instead, you're just going to reverse at the end. So sew a straight line all the way down, keeping the fabric on the edge of the silver. When you get to the end, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches, and lift your needle, lift your foot, cut those threads. And you're going to keep these threads long. Now you'll do a second line just a few millimeters away from the first line. So again, line it up near the top, When you put your needle down, make sure it is just a few millimeters away from your original stitching line. Start to sew, don't reverse, until you get to the end. And then you reverse again, 3 to 4 stitches. Sew to the edge of the fabric, lift the needle end foot, cut those threads. And now at the beginning where you didn't reverse, you have 2 long threads. Pull the top 2 threads, making sure not to pull the bottom threads at the same time. That will lock your stitches. You pull those threads and you should be able to work a gather in down the side of the fabric. Do it about halfway so that you have a machine gather. Your sample is finished, pin it to a sample sheet and hand it in for evaluation.